Hello class, let us start our lesson on business studies, chapter 2, principles of management. In my earlier videos, we were discussing the Fayol's principles of management, and as mentioned before that there are 14 principles of management developed by Henry Fayol. And we have already discussed the first 7 Fayol's principles of management, which were namely division of work, authority and responsibility, discipline, unity of command, unity of direction, subordination of individual interest to general interest, and fair remuneration to all employees. Those were the first 7 principles of management propounded by Henry Fayol. Taking this discussion forward, we now will start today's lesson with the 8th principle of management given by Henry Fayol. And the name of the principle is centralization and decentralization. To understand the principle, we should be clear about the meaning of the terms centralization and decentralization. Centralization means concentration of power or authority in few hands at the top level. So if the top level management is retaining most of the power, or they are having authority in their hands without giving middle or lower level management any authority, or with minimum authority if provided also, then that kind of organization will be termed as centralized organization, or there is centralization. On the other hand, the term decentralization means evenly distribution of power at every level of management. So if the power is distributed evenly among all the level of managements, top level, middle level and the lower level, then that organization will be termed as decentralization, or the organization will be termed as decentralized. So what Fayol has propounded is that he has mentioned that there should not be complete centralization or complete decentralization. In an organization, an extreme case of centralization or extremely decentralization should not be adopted, but there should be a combination of both of these depending upon the nature and size of the organization. So completely centralization or completely decentralization may not be in the favor of the organization. Like if it's an organization is very small, then the small organization can be organized well with centralized technique, because the size is small, so it will be easy to control the organization, even if the top level or the people who are at the top is controlling everything. Because the organization is small, it will be easy to control. But if it's a large organization, then centralizing that large organization may not be fruitful. It may not work in the favor of the organization. Likewise, the nature of employees also may decide the degree of centralization or decentralization. If the employees in the organization are very efficient and they are very competent, then they can be trusted, and in that case decentralization may be practiced or decentralization may be given. But if the employees are not fully developed or they are very less in number, then centralization may be better. But what Fayol has advised is that complete decentralization or complete decentralization should not be there. It should be a balance between the two, or there should be a combination between the two. Like you can take the example of our country, like where the administration at the lowest level, at the block level, that is the panchayat, they have been given more powers to decide about the welfare of the people at the bottom by the central government. So this is decentralization by the central government or at the national level. So it's a fine example of decentralization. So what will be the benefit or the good effects of this principle if adopted in an organization? If an organization is accepting both centralization and decentralization in a balanced way, or they are making a combination of centralization and decentralization together in their organization, then they can have the benefits of both centralization and decentralization. Whichever part they will be centralizing, that benefit of centralization will come to that part, and the decentralization also will bring its own benefits to the organization. Okay, the decision making will be fast at the operational level, because the operational level need not to go to the top level every time to take any order, or for any small issues, or for taking small decisions. Okay, so there will be fast decision making at the operational level. And at the same time, if centralization is there, the top level will have a strict control over the lower levels of the management. If there is a centralization and decentralization both, so it will be in the benefit of all the levels of management if the combination of both is adopted. Whereas if this principle is totally violated, that is, if an organization is made completely centralized, so complete centralization will lead to delay in decision making. Like any decisions to be taken has to be only taken by the top level management, and there may be delay in that decision making because all the parties may not be conveyed the information, or they may not have the proper knowledge about it. On the other hand, complete decentralization may also lead to misuse of authority. If all of the levels or all of the employees are given complete authority about their work, then they may misuse their authority in many cases. So complete decentralization or complete centralization is not always good. It has to be a combination of both. This is what the principle is about. We'll now take the next principle, which is scalar chain. Scalar chain, a very important principle given by Fayol. Now we know there's a chain of authority which is there in every in a management. The various job positions that have been formed in the organization has taken the form of levels of management, and this levels of management has a line of authority, or there is a chain of superior starting from the highest rank to the lowest rank. So the authority always flows by following this chain, and this is what the Henry Fayol has insisted also. The chain of authority or the chain of superior has to be followed when there is any type of communication or any information is flowing. The chain should not be broken. It should flow from the highest to the lowest rank, or from lowest to the highest rank. Whatever information or communication has to be done. So the chain of authority has to be strictly followed. Because when the scalar chain is followed, then the information will be passed through every person or every key or link which is in this chain. So there should not be any skipping of any level or skipping of any chain. The chain of superiors or the chain of authority which is established by the management. Like you can see in this diagram here, we have a chain of authority or a line of authority. You can say A being at the top, have B and E under him, then C and F are under B and E respectively, and D and G are under C and F respectively. So this is following a chain of or line of authority where the superior is A, under him is B, then B is superior to C, likewise C is superior to D. This side also we can see the chain of or line of authority or chain of superiors. So as per the scalar chain, the information should be flowing from following this chain of authority. That is, if anything is to be conveyed to G by A, then that should be following from A to E, then E to F, then F to G. Or if anything to be conveyed to D, then it should flow from A to B by the top management, I mean, A to B, B to C, and then C to D. Likewise, if D wants to communicate something to G, then he has to follow the chain of authority superiors. That is, D will pass on the information to C, C will pass on it to B, B to A, and from A, coming from E, F, finally it will be conveyed to G. So any order or suggestions will be flowing downward, or orders or instructions, I mean. Whereas the requests, complaints, and suggestions will go upward, following this chain, known as the scalar chain. So if scalar chain is followed, there will be no communication gap. Means whatever information has to be conveyed, that will be conveyed to the exact party. Even though it will take time, it will be conveyed properly. But what if there is an emergency, or if there is something to be like informed very urgently? So in such situation, Fayol has permitted a violation of the scalar chain, or Fayol has permitted a shortcut to this scalar chain, and that shortcut, which can be only adopted when there is an emergency, or if any urgent information is to be shared, is known as gang plank. It's a plank. Plank is like a piece of wood, isn't it? So we can use a form of communication known as gang plank within the scalar chain if there is any urgency or if there is an emergency. So it's a violation of scalar chain, but it's an exception. Not that always it should be violated, but in case of emergency or urgency it can be. So with gang plank, horizontal communication can take place. So in the same chain of superiors, or chain of authority or line of authority, suppose if C has to communicate something to F. So if it is very urgent to communicate, or if there is an emergency to pass on this information to F, then C can directly communicate the information to F. So when C directly pass on the information to F, that is called gang plank. But the condition to use gang plank is that the information which is passed on should be between two workers or two managers who are at the same level. They should be at the same level of management. Like if a middle level management has to communicate with some other middle level manager of the other department, then they can use gang plank to pass on the information to the other department. So the condition for using gang plank is that both the managers should be working at the same level. And another condition is that before once they have communicated the information, the passing of information should be informed to their respective superior. Like C must inform to B that he has passed on this information to F, who is in another department. Likewise, F should be informing to his superior E that using gang plank, C has conveyed this message or this important information to him, as it was a very important information, or there was an emergency to share this information. So they must be informing their respective superiors about the passing of information if they are communicating through gang plank. Now, what are the positive sides of this principle? If it is accepted or adopted in an organization, how it will benefit the organization? There will be systematic and smooth flow of information. The information will flow systematically and in a smooth way if it is following scalar chain. I mean scalar chain, not gang plank. It is the importance or advantages of using scalar chain in the organization. There will be no communication gap in the organization. Like I mentioned, the communication will flow clearly and to the exact person, and whoever are concerned to know about the information will be conveyed about the information using the scalar chain. And there will be presence of unity of command here. If A if B has to get information, then that will be coming only from A. If they are following scalar chain, there will be no other party who will be communicating with B with the information. So there is unity of command followed here if there is scalar chain. Also, there will be no confusion about the command, who is giving the command to who, because they know who is the immediate superior above them, and the work will be done speedily. The work will be done on time and in an effective way. But if this principle is violated, then there will be disorderly flow of information in the organization. The flow of information will not be smooth, and there will be lots of information gap or communication gap. Yeah. Because directly, if B is communicating to G without knowing, like without telling the same information to E and F, then they will be unaware about it. And if it is something important or relating to these departments, then that will be becoming disorder. It will bring disorder in the organization. There will be bitterness in relations. Like in the same case, if B is directly communicating with G without telling E and F or A about the passing of information, then their relation between them will be not be will be affected by all this. And also the coordination will be affected. There will be no coordination between the various levels. And the superior subordinate relation or the authority responsibility relation cannot be established if the scalar chain is not followed. Like there will be no one will be aware of who is superior to who or who is working under who. That is superior subordinate relationship. Also, they may not clearly know who has the authority or who has a responsibility for any communication to share. Yeah. So this such relationship of superior subordinate or authority responsibility cannot be established if there is no scalar chain adopted in an organization. So that was the 9th principle of Henry Fayol, that is general principles of general management.